At the Civil Affairs Bureau, after waiting bitterly for 3 hours, I tiredly sent a message. Stephen, let's break up. Just as I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I ran straight into my boss, Jeremy, CEO. Are you getting married today too? Secretary Zoe, do you want to marry me? I recalled the message Stephen had just sent me. Zoe, stop messing around. Chloe is really sick. Be good. We'll get the certificate in a few days. I smiled and looked at Jeremy, replying, sure. Chapter 1. Today was the day Stephen and I were supposed to register our marriage. After waiting for him at the Civil Affairs Bureau for 3 hours, I finally got through on the phone. But the one who answered was his goddess, Chloe. Where's Stephen? Stephen is cooking for me. Miss Zoe, is there something you need? Cooking? A sarcastic smile curled on my lips. I had been with Stephen for 2 years and never knew he could cook. Then I heard Stephen's voice from the other end of the line. Zoe, Chloe almost fainted today. Her family isn't around either, so I'm taking care of her for a while. I scoffed. Of all days she could faint, it just had to be today, the day I was supposed to get our marriage certificate. What perfect timing. I suddenly gripped the phone tightly. Stephen, let me ask you just one question. Are you still coming today to register our marriage? Zoe, I really can't leave right now. Delaying the certificate for a couple of days isn't a big deal. Stephen's tone sounded a bit impatient. I was just about to say something when I faintly heard Chloe's startled voice from the other side. Ah, that's hot. And then the call was abruptly ended. I didn't need to see it with my own eyes. I could already imagine Stephen's face full of concern, doting on his goddess. Ever since Chloe came back, as long as she even slightly teared up in front of Stephen, he would look completely heartbroken. But I had never received that kind of treatment. In Stephen's eyes, I was supposed to be considerate and understanding. He had never realized that I was a woman too, and that sometimes I also needed to be cared for. My chest instinctively tightened, but the pain wasn't as intense as I'd imagined. Listening to the busy tone on the other end of the line, I took a deep breath, the corners of my lips curling up into a mocking arc, and I tiredly sent a message. Stephen, let's break up. That's enough. Since Stephen wanted to take care of his goddess, I'd step aside and let them be together. Just as I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I saw Jeremy standing at the entrance, my boss, the CEO of Gene Group. I was momentarily stunned. As Jeremy's secretary, I had no idea that getting married was on his schedule today. CEO, are you getting married today too? Jeremy's dark eyes swept over me and he gave a faint mem. Well, congratulations. Congratulations. I had wanted to ask, so why are you here alone to get married? But I remembered that as a secretary, I shouldn't cross the line by prying into the boss's private life. So I swallowed the question. Jeremy gave a faint smile. Secretary Zoe, do you want to marry me? Me, huh? What a coincidence. Could it be that Jeremy got stood up too? Jeremy's voice was low and steady. Since both of us are here alone, why not just pair up and get married? I recalled the message Stephen had just sent me. Zoe, stop messing around. Chloe is really sick. Be good. We'll get the certificate in a few days. I smiled and looked at Jeremy, replying, sure. Chapter 2. In less than 10 minutes, I had a freshly issued marriage certificate in my hand. Looking at the photo of us on the certificate, I suddenly wondered if I had acted a bit impulsively. What's wrong? Regretting it already? Jeremy asked in a calm voice. I pressed my lips together and countered, CEO, are you doing this out of spite toward Miss Lynn? As his secretary, I knew a bit about my boss's private life. I had even helped pick out gifts for Miss Lynn. Although I'd never met this Miss Lynn, any woman Jeremy put effort into must be someone special. Jeremy looked at me, his voice still light. She's not worth that. Secretary Zoe, you'll understand one day. Oh, I usually followed my boss's words without question, after all. He was the one paying my salary. But just now, I felt like there was a flicker of sadness in Jeremy's eyes, which didn't quite fit his usual cold and dominant CEO persona. After parting ways with Jeremy, I went back to my little apartment. While I was with Stephen, we never fully lived together, which was why I bought the small place for myself. As soon as I got home, I deleted and blocked every single one of Steven's contact methods. From now on, he'd walk his bridge, and I'd take my own road. Wait. Not exactly. I suddenly remembered that my road now included Jeremy. He said he'd give me a 1-week adaptation period, and then I'd have to move in with him. Thinking about spending nearly 24 hours a day with him as my boss during the day. And at night, I suddenly felt a little lost. I still didn't understand why Jeremy had suggested this marriage arrangement. Could it really be because he was upset with Miss Lynn? I'd only been his secretary for a month, we weren't even that familiar. And yet, I actually agreed? Looking at Jeremy's face again in my mind, did I fall for him just because he was hot? While I was lost in thought, the phone suddenly rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Hello? Zoe, you blocked me? Steven's voice came through gritted teeth. I could picture his darkened expression even without seeing him. That's just how he was. All the time we were together, anytime I acted a little clingy or sensitive, he'd think I was being unreasonable and his face would immediately turn cold. And yet Chloe could throw a tantrum every day and he still couldn't see through her. Was he blind? The me from yesterday might have still tried to coax him, but now, that's right, we already broke up. Why would I keep you around if not to block you? My mocking tone clearly pissed Steven off even more. Can you stop being so irrational? If you still want the marriage certificate, we can go get it tomorrow. I laughed in disbelief. Steven, the world doesn't revolve around you. You've lost your chance. And with that, I hung up, blocked his number, all in one swift motion. Chapter 3. The next day, I went downstairs to head to work. Just as I stepped outside the residential complex, a car pulled up beside me. A familiar car, it was Steven's. He got out and walked straight up to me, opening with a sharp tone of questioning. Zoe, are you done being dramatic yet? Can you act a little more mature? Blocking me like that, it's childish. I rolled my eyes in disbelief. Mr. Steven, did you hit your head and lose your memory? We've already broken up. Steven stared at me for a long moment, as if it only just hit him that I wasn't joking. Yesterday, Chloe was really sick. I was just taking care of her. If that's what made you upset, then fine, I apologize. What a half-hearted apology. I wondered how I had tolerated him for the past 2 years. I let out a quiet sigh, heart aching a little for the old me. I looked up at him. Steven, you and Chloe, what kind of relationship you two have? We both know perfectly well. As your ex-girlfriend, let me offer you a kind piece of advice. Open your eyes and see people for who they really are. Now move. Zoe, what's that supposed to mean? What did Chloe ever do to you? She's just a good friend of mine. Sure enough, she was the one he held closest to his heart. He wouldn't let me say a single bad word about her. I shrugged indifferently and brushed past him to flag down a taxi. Just then, a black Bentley pulled up beside me. The chauffeur quickly got out and walked over with a respectful tone. Madam, sir has some business today and asked me to take you to work. I froze for several seconds before it registered. By sir, he must be referring to Jeremy. This must be one of the after effects of a flash marriage. I had almost forgotten I married him just yesterday. Before I could say anything, Steven stared at the driver in shock and was the first to speak. What did you just call her? The driver glanced at him. This is my employer's wife. Of course I called her madam. Steven looked even more stunned. Zoe, when did you get married? Yesterday. I said it lightly, then ignored him completely and got into the car. This news must have hit Steven like a slap in the face. After all, he had always thought he had me completely under control, that I couldn't live without him. Even when he repeatedly ditched me during dates to run to Chloe, I still chose to forgive him in the end. But this time, I won't. Chapter 4. Back at the office, I quickly shifted into work mode. I first sorted out the documents that needed Jeremy's approval from each department and handed them over to his assistant, Tom. But Tom didn't take them. Instead, he smiled and said, Secretary Zoe, from now on, you'll be delivering the documents to him personally. Huh? But I hesitated. When I was suddenly promoted to be the CEO's secretary, Tom had given me a long list of things to be careful about, one of which was never to enter Jeremy's office without permission. Tom explained. Per the CEO's instructions, Secretary Zoe is now allowed to enter and exit his office freely. There was a subtle meaning in his tone. and I guessed he probably already knew that Jeremy and I had registered our marriage. All right. Reluctantly, I carried the files to his door and knocked. I really hadn't figured out how to face Jeremy yet. Having your boss turn into your husband, it's awkward no matter how you look at it. Behind the massive desk, Jeremy was focused on reviewing documents. I quickly placed the files on his desk, hoping to slip out quietly. Secretary Zoe. That familiar cool and composed voice came from behind me. I took a deep breath, put on a professional smile, and turned around. CEO, I've placed the documents on your desk. Do you have any other instructions? Jeremy set down his pen, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest, looking at me with a half smile. I lifted my hand to touch my face. I'd put on light makeup this morning. Had it smudged or something? After a while, Jeremy finally spoke slowly. Have you eaten breakfast? I quickly responded. CEO, would you like me to get you some breakfast? I'll go now. There had been a few times before when Tom asked me to order breakfast for Jeremy, so I assumed that's what he meant. Jeremy's lips curved into a teasing smile. Secretary Zoe, you really are a model employee. I guess so. Otherwise, why would the CEO suddenly promote a newcomer like me to be your secretary? I didn't even bother to be modest, because honestly, I couldn't think of any other reason. I originally applied for a position in the design department, but was suddenly informed I'd been hired as the CEO's secretary. If it weren't for the doubled salary, I wouldn't have wanted this job either. Upon hearing that, Jeremy's eyes flickered slightly. He raised his hand and pointed to the coffee table. There's breakfast over there. Eat it. I froze for a moment, confused as I looked at him. I didn't understand what he meant. Jeremy patiently explained again. Your gastritis is caused by irregular meals, especially skipping breakfast. That breakfast is for you. Eat some. My boss brought me breakfast? I couldn't help but get a bad feeling. And how did he even know I had gastritis? With that thought, I directly asked, CEO, how do you know I have gastritis? And how do you know I don't eat breakfast? Jeremy replied casually. You're my secretary. Shouldn't I know a bit about you? After a short pause, he looked at me again and said, Secretary Zoe, did you forget? You're not just my employee now, you're also the name next to mine on a marriage certificate. I don't want to be a widower right after getting married. His words sounded cold, but they tightened something in my chest, and a subtle warmth unexpectedly spread in my eyes. Stephen and I were together for 2 years, and he never once noticed my stomach problems, let alone reminded me to eat on time. I still remember one time when the pain was unbearable. I called him and asked him to buy me some medicine. He replied with just one sentence. Order it on Mate One yourself. I've got something urgent. Before I could say anything else, he coldly hung up the call. Later, I accidentally heard from one of his friends that Stephen's so-called urgent matter that day was going to the airport to pick up Chloe, who had just landed. I knew, in Stephen's world, I would always come after Chloe. Maybe, back then, he was only with me because Chloe hadn't come back yet. I was just a stand-in. Chapter 5. Secretary Zoe? The man's cool, pleasant scent drifted to my nose, snapping me back to reality. I suddenly found Jeremy's handsome face enlarged right in front of me. My heart began to race uncontrollably. President. Is something wrong? That small shock from Jeremy had completely swept away all the heavy emotions I'd just been feeling. Jeremy lifted his hand and gave my forehead a light flick. What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and eat your breakfast. The little gesture made my cheeks flush with a hint of red. I instinctively glanced toward the door, worried that someone might walk in and see this. It wouldn't look good. Even though I'd married Jeremy, I still didn't want people at the company to know. Otherwise, who knew how many rumors would be flying behind my back? Noticing how cautious I was, Jeremy frowned slightly. Relax. Not just anyone can come in and out of my office. Oh. I quickly walked over to the coffee table and picked up the breakfast. Then, I'll take it back to my desk to eat. Secretary Zoe, if you walk out of my office carrying breakfast, aren't you afraid of giving people the wrong impression? I froze mid-step. Now that he mentioned it, yeah, that could look bad. Quietly, I sat down on the couch beside the coffee table again and gave a sheepish smile. Then I'll eat it here before I go. Only then did Jeremy seem satisfied. returning to his desk to continue reviewing documents. The office became almost too quiet, so much so that I didn't even dare chew too loudly, afraid I'd disturb the calm. I had to admit, the breakfast Jeremy prepared suited my taste perfectly. He actually seemed like a rather thoughtful person. Unconsciously, I looked up at the man behind the desk. Noble, composed, strikingly handsome. I often saw some of the female colleagues swooning over Jeremy at work. Before, I only saw him as my boss and didn't think much of it. But now, looking at him this closely and seriously, he really was attractive. It was still hard to believe I had actually married him. Maybe sensing my gaze, Jeremy looked up. I quickly turned my eyes away, finished the last bite of breakfast, and stood up. President, I've finished. I'll get back to work now. As I reached the door, a warm voice came from behind me. Wife, let's have dinner together tonight. I didn't say yes, and I didn't say no. I just hurried out the door, mainly because that word, wife, was too much for me to handle. Back when I was with Steven, I was always the one chasing after him. And now, being treated this way by someone, especially when that someone was my boss, it was all a bit too much to take in. Chapter 6. Soon, it was time to get off work. By the time I finished everything on hand, it was already 7 o'clock. I glanced at the CEO's office. It was still lit. I had no idea when he would get off. Would he forget about that dinner he mentioned this morning? If he forgot, that might be better. Staring at Jeremy's face for too long, my poor heart might not be able to handle it. Just as I was thinking that, a WeChat notification popped up. Jeremy, wait for me in the parking lot. I let out a soft sigh and resignedly headed for the parking lot. Secretary Zoe, waiting for someone? At the elevator lobby of the parking garage, I ran into Orson, the marketing department manager. As he stepped out, I nodded. Orson stared directly at me. Zoe, when you have time, how about having dinner with me? I frowned. When I first joined the company, Orson had already tried to ask me out several times. I rejected him each time, yet he kept pushing. I was well aware of what he was after. Just as I was about to decline again, my phone rang. Seeing Jeremy's name on the screen, I quickly picked up. Hello? Exit B. Got it. I'm coming. I gave a polite nod to Orson and hurried toward exit B. When I saw the same Bentley from this morning, I instinctively reached for the back door, only to hear Jeremy's cool voice from the driver's seat. Secretary Zoe, do you really think I'm your chauffeur? Just a habit. I gave a sheepish laugh and slid into the front passenger seat. Jeremy glanced over at me. Secretary Zoe seems quite popular. Huh? That sounded oddly passive-aggressive. It took me a second to realize he must have seen me talking with Orson just now. Could it be? Jeremy, are you jealous? Realizing that, I suddenly got bold enough to call him by his name, first and last. Jeremy gave a soft snort, but didn't answer, instead starting the car and pulling away from the curb. But I definitely saw the way he stiffened a little just now, that kind of subtle flinch when someone pokes right where it hits. This man might actually have feelings for me. The restaurant we went to was a 5-star Western place. As expected, life changes when you're married to a big shot. While we were waiting for the food, I went to use the restroom. When I came back out, I saw Jeremy in the hallway outside the restaurant, just ending a phone call. I was about to walk toward him when I saw a familiar figure accidentally bump into him. It looked like an accident on the surface. But that woman, wasn't it Chloe? So sorry. I'm so sorry. Chloe apologized repeatedly, her voice soft and syrupy. It was enough to make someone's skin crawl. Jeremy immediately took a big step back and gave her a sidelong glance. Chloe lowered her head with an innocent, shy look. Hi, sir, can I add you on WeChat? Jeremy coolly said just one word, no, then turned and walked off with long strides. Chloe stomped her foot in frustration. I stood there watching and curled my lips into a cold smile. That accidental bump just now? Chloe was clearly trying to flirt with Jeremy. If Steven saw this, I wonder what he'd think. After all, in his heart, Chloe was the purest goddess of them all. When I returned to the table, the food had already arrived. To my surprise, Jeremy had ordered everything I liked. He really seemed to know me well. We were only halfway through the meal when a familiar voice interrupted us. Miss Zoe, What are you doing here? Chapter 7. I didn't even have to look up to know it was Chloe. The next thing I heard was Steven's furious voice. Zoe, is the reason you're breaking up with me because there's another man? At first, I had planned to ignore them, but hearing the two of them questioning me like this, I couldn't help but laugh and fire back. Where I am and what I'm doing, what does that have to do with either of you? Chloe looked a little aggrieved. But this is a 5-star romantic restaurant, and you're here with another man. I wasn't in the mood to play nice. Oh, did your family open this restaurant? Or are you implying I can't afford to eat here? Or that I'm not allowed to come here with someone else? But when Steven heard me speak to his goddess like that, his face darkened visibly. Zoe, you're clearly the one at fault. Why are you being so aggressive? Who is this man? Why are you with him? A calm, detached voice cut through the tension before I could speak. You don't have the right to know who I am. Jeremy, who had been facing away the entire time, slowly turned around, his cold gaze sweeping over both of them. The moment Chloe saw him, she froze. Whatever hint of satisfaction had been on her face morphed into jealousy. Why is the man I was just flirting with here? Steven was clearly stunned too. Jeremy's naturally imposing aura had shut him right up. I walked over to Jeremy and took his arm, smiling lightly. Let me introduce you. This is my husband, Jeremy. What? Isn't Jeremy your boss? Steven was shocked. No wonder the man had looked familiar. He had once seen Jeremy Jean from a distance at a corporate banquet, the CEO of Jean Group. I suddenly remembered that when I was first hired as Jeremy's secretary, I had mentioned it to Steven. Back then, he just casually replied, someone of his status probably only picked you for your abilities. In his eyes, I had nothing that could possibly attract someone like Jeremy Jean, but he conveniently forgot, back in school, I was ranked among the top 3 prettiest girls. Jeremy looked down at me and said calmly, I'm Zoe's boss. Yes, but I'm also her husband now. Since Mr. Steven knows who I am, he should also know better than to harass my wife. He didn't even glance in Steven's direction as he said it. Steven might be a rich second generation, but compared to Jeremy, there was no competition. All he could do now was glare at me, full of frustration. Chloe clenched her fists tightly. Didn't Miss Zoe say she was going to register with Steven yesterday? How did you end up marrying Mr. Jean instead? She still refused to believe that I could possibly be that lucky. I replied coldly, well, I should thank you for that. If you hadn't clung to Steven yesterday, I might have missed my chance with Jeremy. I paused, then raised a brow. Chloe, you seem awfully interested in my men. I took out my phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to Steven. Here, Steven, have a look at how pure and kind your goddess really is. I hadn't planned to go this far, but Chloe had insisted on provoking me. The video I showed him was the exact moment she tried to flirt with Jeremy and ask for his contact info, which I had just recorded earlier. Chloe leaned in to look as well, and her eyes widened. This. Steven. Steven wasn't stupid. Of course he understood what Chloe's intentions toward Jeremy had been in that moment, but whether it was to save face or because he chose to believe Chloe, he looked at me with a sour expression and said, Zoe, I know exactly what kind of person Chloe is. You think a video like this proves anything? Look at yourself. You were supposed to be my fiancé, and you went and married another man behind my back. Were you already cozying up to your boss, pretending to break up with me out of some false sense of decency? Listen to that. Every word Steven said blamed me. In his eyes, I was the one who cheated on him. Utterly ridiculous. I must have been out of my mind to ever like him in the first place. Hearing Steven's words, Chloe finally breathed a sigh of relief. A flash of smugness flickered in her eyes. She had always known Steven would stand by her, no matter what. I sneered. Steven, think whatever you want. I've already done you and Chloe a favor. I'm married now, and you two can be together however you please. From now on, let's just move on with our own lives. If we ever meet again, let's pretend we don't know each other. Steven opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off coldly by Jeremy. Mr. Steven, until the moment Zoe and I registered our marriage yesterday, our relationship was strictly professional. Even though we don't owe you any explanation, I won't tolerate anyone slandering my wife. After speaking, He picked up the handbag beside me and reached out to take my hand. Let's go. I let him lead me out of the restaurant. It had been a long time since someone had stood up for me like that. In that moment, my exhausted heart felt a trace of peace, and just the faintest flutter. Chapter 8. A week flew by in the blink of an eye. I was gradually getting used to my new relationship with Jeremy. Although at work, Jeremy never gave me any special treatment because of our relationship. In daily life, I had to admit, he was a pretty good husband, attentive, considerate. I suddenly felt like I'd gotten lucky. That day at the Civil Affairs Bureau, I got stood up, but ended up marrying Jeremy. Still, I never quite figured out, did Jeremy also get stood up that day and agree to marry me out of spite? I'd asked him once. He just smiled and said, "It's not time yet." After that, I never brought it up again. As we had agreed, I moved into Jeremy's villa, but just as I moved in, Jeremy left on a business trip, which conveniently helped avoid the initial awkwardness of living together. Even though he was away, he still reminded me to eat on time every single day. And ever since, my gastritis hadn't flared up once. After work today, I stopped by my small apartment to pack up a few more things and bring them to the villa. Just as I walked out of the apartment, a gust of autumn wind blew through. It was chilly. I headed toward the intersection to catch a cab when a dark figure suddenly appeared behind me. Getting closer and closer, I was just about to quicken my pace when a large hand grabbed me. Startled, I cried out, "Ah, Zoe." "It's me," Stephen's voice, still shaken. I looked up, and sure enough, it was Stephen. "Stephen, what are you doing here? I've been waiting for you for a few days. Finally, I caught you." As he spoke, a strong stench of alcohol filled the air with every breath he took. I frowned and yanked my hand free. "We already broke up. Why are you waiting for me?" "Zoe, you were right all along. Chloe lied to me. She was just using me to get closer to someone richer." So it turns out Stephen had suspected something after seeing that video. Maybe he even did some digging. I raised a brow. "Congrats, you finally saw her true colors. But what does that have to do with me?" Stephen's face clouded. "I'm sorry, Zoe. Can we not break up?" I let out a laugh in disbelief. "So now that your goddess let you down, you suddenly realize I was the better choice?" "Stephen, I'm married, and even if I weren't, there's no chance for us. Ask yourself, these past 2 years, did you really love me, or was I just Chloe's stand-in?" In his heart, it had always been Chloe. I was just too naive back then, moved by his constant sweetheart. "Zoe, nonsense." Stephen stayed silent for a moment, then suddenly grabbed my hand again. "Zoe, I've thought it through. The one I really like is you. I just didn't realize it before, but somewhere along the way, I'd already fallen for you." "So what?" His sudden confession left me completely unmoved. "You say you like me, and I'm just supposed to like you back. Do me a favor, Stephen, don't contact me again. I don't want my husband to get the wrong idea." At my words, Stephen's eyes turned frighteningly red, and his grip on my hand tightened. I struggled, trying to pull away, but I couldn't. Fear started creeping in. "Stephen, let go of me." Chapter 9. Suddenly, Stephen was knocked backward by a punch, nearly falling to the ground. It was Jeremy. The moment I saw him, a sudden sense of calm washed over me. Jeremy narrowed his eyes at Stephen. "Stephen, I warned you, stay away from my wife." Stephen wiped a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. Maybe it was the alcohol talking, but for once, he actually seemed to have some nerve in front of Jeremy. "Zoe was my fiancée. You're the one who came between us." I looked at him, letting out a cold laugh, not sparing him even a sliver of dignity. "Stephen, do you really think this pathetic show of affection is convincing? Isn't it ridiculous? I'm married to Jeremy now. I'm his wife. And you? Go live your life, just stay out of ours." With that, I took Jeremy's hand and walked away, leaving Stephen frozen in place. Once we got into the car, I hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I just came to grab a few things. I had no idea Stephen would be here. Whether Jeremy would overthink it or not, I still felt the need to explain, just to avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings." Jeremy responded with a low hum. I know, as long as you're okay. That simple sentence warmed my heart. The fact that he came looking for me right after returning from a business trip. That was what it felt like to be truly cared for. Jeremy. Yeah. Can I hug you? As soon as the words left my mouth, I didn't even wait for an answer. I leaned over and hugged him tightly. In that moment, I didn't think of him as my boss, just my husband. I clearly felt his body tense slightly at first. Then his arms slowly came around me in return, holding me just as tight. He said softly, "Zoe, you'll always have me from now on." His tone was firm, reassuring, and maybe, just maybe, a little triumphant. No man had ever said anything like that to me before. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding like a drum, if I weren't keeping myself grounded. I might actually believe Jeremy had liked me for a long time. Chapter 10. The weekend. I curled up at home, planning to do some painting. I actually majored in design in college, but it had been a long time since I last picked up a brush. I called Jeremy to ask if I could use his study. "Jeremy, I want to paint for a bit. Can I use your study?" He seemed to hesitate for a moment on the other end of the line, then said, "The room next to my study, you can use that one." "Okay. By the way, when are you coming back?" "Soon. Do you want some dessert? I can bring you something." I froze for a second, then smiled. "If it's not too much trouble." "Sure. Bring me something." I really did like sweets, but I hadn't expected Jeremy to notice that. After hanging up, I grabbed my art supplies and went to the room Jeremy had mentioned. I'd been living here for about 2 weeks, but I'd never been inside that room. The moment I opened the door, I stood frozen in surprise. It was an art studio, fully equipped with painting supplies. All of it was brand new, still unopened. Does Jeremy paint too? As his secretary, I was thoroughly familiar with his basic profile, but painting had never been listed as one of his hobbies. Still, this room was incredibly comfortable. I quickly found myself absorbed in the process of painting. I had no idea how much time passed until the door was gently pushed open. Jeremy walked in carrying a dessert box and a bouquet of yellow roses. "Finished painting?" I put down my brush and stood up to face him. "Yeah. It's been a while. I'm a bit rusty." Jeremy looked at my painting for a while, then smiled softly. "Not bad. You haven't lost your touch." I hadn't really heard what he said. I was more focused on the things in his hands. "Are those flowers for me?" "Of course. They're for my wife. All girls like flowers, don't they?" He handed the bouquet to me, then placed the dessert box on the table and opened it. "You can have a little dessert. Dinner's coming up soon." I held the bouquet in my arms. The rich fragrance filled the air, and the corners of my lips lifted unconsciously. "Thank you. This must be what it feels like to be cherished." The dessert was a beautifully made strawberry cake, my favorite flavor. "Jeremy, I think you're the kind of boss who knows your employees really well." Jeremy glanced at me and smirked slightly. "I only know you that well." My cheeks instantly burned. I quickly tried to change the subject. "So, what's with the art studio? Do you paint too?" Jeremy raised an eyebrow slightly. "I don't paint." "Then this place, it was prepared for you," Jeremy said, cutting me off softly. I pressed my lips together. If I still couldn't tell something was off at this point, I'd have to be a total idiot. I looked up at him. "How did you know I paint?" I was sure I hadn't written it on my resume. Jeremy answered calmly. "You originally applied for the design department. Anyone who studied design probably knows how to draw. But this setup is clearly for oil painting. How did you know I like oil painting specifically?" I stared straight at him, trying to read his micro-expressions, but the man was completely composed, not a flicker of guilt. He simply smiled and said, "Just wait a little longer. I'll tell you." Then after a short pause, he added, "Secretary Zoe, a university has its anniversary celebration next week. Add it to my schedule." With that, he turned and left the art studio. It took me a few seconds to react. Jeremy went to a university too. But someone like him, surely he would have been the center of attention on campus. So how had I never heard of him? Chapter 11. A few days later. It was the anniversary celebration at a university. I hadn't planned on going back, but since Jeremy was invited, I tagged along as his secretary. Only after reading some background material did I learn that Gene Group had been making generous donations to a university every year. No wonder they listed Jeremy as a VIP guest. Since graduating, I hadn't returned to campus in ages. While Jeremy was off talking business with the president and some faculty members, I wandered the campus on my own. And wouldn't you know it, speak of the devil, I ran into Chloe again. Then again. She was a university student too, so it wasn't really surprising that she was here. I quickly looked away and pretended not to see her, changing direction to avoid her. But Chloe had already spotted me. She came straight toward me. None of that fragile act she used in front of Steven. Now, she looked aggressive, barking at me. Zoe, did you say something to Steven? Is that why he's been ignoring me lately? I frowned. So Steven really did want to get back with me the other day. It wasn't just drunken talk. Looks like he actually dumped Chloe. I gave a mocking smile. Whatever you did behind Steven's back, you know better than anyone. He's not stupid. Chloe clenched her teeth in anger. This is all your fault. If you hadn't shown him that video, he wouldn't be doubting me now. Zoe, you did it on purpose. You just wanted revenge. Chloe, Steven is a man I didn't want anymore. Why would I waste my time trying to get revenge on you? Don't flatter yourself. Her once arrogant face twisted with rage. Then, as if something suddenly occurred to her, she sneered. You're just clinging to a rich man. Do you honestly think someone like Jeremy is serious about you? He's just playing around. You're nothing but a fling to him. And what makes you so sure I'm not serious about my wife? A cold, steady voice rang out behind me. Jeremy walked over, wrapped his arm around my waist, and fixed a chilling gaze on Chloe as he spoke slowly and clearly. The only woman I've ever loved in this lifetime is my wife. Both Chloe and I were stunned. Her expression froze. Inside, she was shattered, and her eyes were full of resentment. Even if she had tried to seduce Jeremy with tricks and charm, that door was now firmly shut. And for me, those words from Jeremy finally connected a few dots I'd been ignoring. Jeremy, have you known me for a long time? Jeremy chuckled softly but didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, Come on, I want to show you something. Chapter 12. Under Chloe's unwilling gaze, Jeremy and I walked away, fingers tightly interlaced. He took me to the art studio at a university. I knew this place well. Throughout my 4 years of college, I would come here to paint whenever I had free time. I tilted my head slightly and looked at him. You knew about this place? Were you really a student here at a university? Jeremy nodded. I was, but I only stayed here for half a year before going abroad. I suddenly understood. No wonder I'd never heard of you. Someone like you would have been the most talked about person on campus. Jeremy chuckled. What kind of person am I? I searched my mind for the right words. Handsome, noble, like a god descended from the heavens. Oh, so that's how well I'm regarded in my wife's eyes. His gaze fell warmly on me, his voice soft as he said, 6 years ago, I met a girl here, someone who shone even brighter. My mind went blank for a second. That girl wouldn't happen to be me, would it? But I was certain I had never seen him before. Jeremy didn't answer. He seemed lost in his memories as he spoke quietly. One day, I happened to walk past the art studio. I glanced in through the window, and there she was, a girl in a white dress, her hair in a high ponytail, completely absorbed in her painting. The sunlight streamed in through the window and wrapped around her like a halo. She was breathtaking. That was the moment I knew such a girl existed at our school. The second time I saw her was at the freshman welcome party. She played a piano piece. It was beautiful. That's when I learned her name, Zoe. At the time, I was kind of a big deal at school. After the event, a lot of freshmen tried to get to know me, but she acted like I didn't even exist. After that, I'd go out of my way just to pass by the studio. I saw her many times, each time she was lost in her own world, completely untouched by everything outside of it. By now, my eyes were already red, and my voice trembled slightly. And then what? You left? Jeremy came back to the present, looking at me deeply. Yes, going abroad had always been part of my plan, but meeting you was not. I never expected that even after I left, your image would stay with me for the next 5 years. His words were like a hand gripping my heart, tight, overwhelming. Tears welled up, blurring my vision. I'd always known I was attractive, people had complimented me since I was little, and I'd received more love letters than I could count. But for someone to carry feelings for me so silently, for so long, that kind of love, I had never dared imagine. I looked up at him. Why didn't you ever try to find me? Jeremy reached out and gently wiped away the tears at the corners of my eyes. His voice was a little rough. When I came back, you were already with Steven, so I had no choice but to bury those feelings again. But I never expected you'd apply for a job at Gene Group. Maybe that was fate giving me another chance. I sniffled. So you intentionally made me your secretary, and here I thought I got promoted for being talented. He chuckled and gave my nose a playful tap. Promoting you was selfish. Yes, but you were definitely qualified. Do you think HR would have even let your resume reach me if you hadn't passed their standards? Then, I hesitated, then bit my lip. That day at the Civil Affairs Bureau, who were you supposed to marry? If he'd held on to feelings for me all this time, why would he agree to marry someone else? Jeremy let out a soft laugh. My wife, do you still not get it? Why would I ever marry someone else before marrying you? Once a heart begins to love, it can never turn back. Chapter 13. I stood frozen for a long time before finally realizing the truth. My heartbeat grew faster and faster as I asked in a trembling voice, "You were coming to find me that day?" Jeremy's gaze burned. I didn't think Steven deserved you. I had planned to stop your wedding that day. I didn't expect him to leave you at the Civil Affairs Bureau. So, what had seemed like coincidence was really deliberate all along. This man, who always appeared cold and detached, had been quietly harboring his feelings for the girl from all those years ago. Like a bottle of vintage liquor, growing stronger with time, I rose on my toes, hooked my arms around his neck, and kissed his lips softly. Jeremy, thank you for not giving up on me. Back then, I really thought Steven liked me. At least, before Chloe came back. He treated me well. But now, with Jeremy as comparison, I finally understood. Steven's kindness only existed because I happened to resemble Chloe a little bit. I used to hang everything on Steven, blind to the gaze that had always been watching me from behind. Looking back now, I had been hopelessly foolish. Thank God. Jeremy never gave up. He wiped away my tears and lowered his head to kiss the corners of my eyes, tender and gentle beyond words. Zoe. I finally married the girl I've loved all this time. He took my hand, his long fingers laced between mine as he led me calmly out of the studio. The autumn sun spilled over us, casting a long shadow behind. That evening, back at home, Jeremy went to the study. I showered and came out to check my phone, responded to a few messages, then casually opened my feed to scroll. And then I saw it. Jeremy had posted something. A rare post. The photo was my silhouette taken earlier today at a university. The caption read, "Wish fulfilled. Curious." I tapped on his profile, and to my shock, I realized he had posted before. He had just hidden it from me. I opened the first post. A photo of me from behind, painting in the art studio. Caption, "She seems to really like painting." The second post, a photo of me at the basketball court, watching others play. Caption, "Is there someone she likes on that court?" My hand trembled as I scrolled through each post. There was a 5-year gap in the middle. Then, 2 years ago, another photo of me from behind. Caption, "It's been 5 years. I finally saw her again, but now there's another man beside her. She seems to like him." I kept scrolling. Then I found the one from our marriage registration day. I finally married the girl I've always loved. Since then, his posts were all about me, my daily life. Moments I didn't even realize he noticed. Tears blurred my vision, falling uncontrollably down my cheeks. My chest tightened with an overwhelming ache, sour, bitter, and breathless. So all these years, he had always been watching, quietly, from places I could never see. Even when someone else appeared beside me, he hadn't dared to step forward. But he was Jeremy. He was the CEO of Gene Group. He was supposed to be powerful, dazzling, the center of attention. Yet for me, he had been so timid. I stood up and headed straight for the study. The moment I pushed open the door, Jeremy looked up and saw my red, tear-filled eyes. He immediately stood and strode toward me. I rushed into his arms and held him tightly. Jeremy pulled me tightly into his arms and asked hoarsely, Why are you crying? My voice still trembled with leftover sobs. Jeremy, why are you so stupid? Why didn't you just tell me? What would you have done if I had married Stephen that day? Jeremy clearly knew I had seen his social media posts. He gently patted my back and murmured lowly, "As long as you're happy, nothing else matters." I looked up at him through tear-reddened eyes and slowly smiled. Jeremy, from now on, I'll only love you. Chapter 14. The last time I saw Stephen was at a banquet I attended with Jeremy. He called out to me, and I had no choice but to stop walking away. The woman on his arm wasn't Chloe. I'd heard Chloe was now dating some rich second-generation heir. Stephen looked at me, his eyes filled with complicated emotions. Zoe, how have you been lately? I glanced at him coolly. Without you and Chloe around, I've been doing just fine. Stephen frowned, looking at me now, radiant, confident, like a gem that had finally been polished. He still wasn't willing to give up. Is Jeremy good to you? I chuckled softly. Stephen, I really should thank you for not marrying me. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have ended up with Jeremy. I'm very happy now, so please, don't disturb my life again. Leaving him with those words, I turned and walked over to Jeremy, taking his arm and whispering sweetly, "Let's go home." Jeremy glanced back at Stephen, who was still staring at me, then turned to me with a gentle voice, "Okay." Story 2. The night before the wedding, I accidentally saw Andrew's phone. He had posted a video of me using crutches in a group chat. Guys, who gets it? Every time I see her limping like that, it makes me want to puke. If I had known I'd be spending my life with someone I don't love, I'd rather have been the one who lost a limb. I really want to escape the wedding. The next moment, I was back to the moment of the accident. As Andrew wished, I didn't save him this time. This time, he lost a leg and went blind. Chapter 1. When Andrew went to take a shower, his phone started vibrating wildly. The moment I picked up the phone, I inadvertently saw the messages on the screen. Why not just go out for drinks? Get completely wasted, and then the wedding tomorrow will naturally be cancelled. Or just disappear. Come back in a month, and uncle and aunt won't blame you. You've been taking care of Emma for 3 years. You can't spend your whole life on her. At worst, you can just pay her family some compensation, or just pretend to have amnesia. I stood there in shock, my hands trembling. I couldn't believe it. The person I had loved for 10 years, while I was nervously and hopefully looking forward to the wedding, he was plotting to escape the wedding. With every page of the chat history I swiped through, my heart sank further. Guys, who gets it? Every time I see her limping like that, it makes me want to puke. If I had known I'd spend my life with someone I don't love, I'd rather have been the one to lose a limb. If it weren't for the value of Emma's family's company, I wouldn't have put up with it for so long. Every line was filled with disdain for me. He even sent a video of me using crutches to his group of childhood friends. In the video, my left leg was missing from the knee down, completely amputated. 3 years ago, when the accident happened, I didn't hesitate to throw myself at Andrew. I took most of the impact for him and lost my left leg as a result. I was a dancer, but now I have lost my leg. I fell into despair and a deep breakdown, but I remembered how Andrew's eyes were filled with pain back then. He gently picked me up, carried me horizontally, and patiently helped me practice over and over again. He promised me, word for word, in my ear, "Emma, don't give up. I will always be with you. If you can't walk for the rest of your life, then I will be your legs for the rest of my life." But the chat history in front of me slapped me harshly. The video he made to encourage me had become a joke for them to mock me. My efforts to walk looked absurd to him. As I sobbed uncontrollably, Andrew pushed open the door. "Emma, what's wrong?" Seeing my tear-streaked face, Andrew's voice clearly became tense. He gently kissed my forehead and said, "Are you nervous about the wedding tomorrow? Is my Emma suffering from pre-wedding anxiety?" I silently turned my head away and bit my lip tightly. Seeing me avoid him, Andrew instinctively reached out to hug me, but when he saw the phone screen, his face suddenly turned ashen. He snatched the phone from my hands, his eyes filled with panic. I used all my strength to steady my emotions. but I couldn't stop shaking, faced with my relentless questioning. Andrew couldn't say a word. After a while, he finally stopped pretending and his expression completely changed. Putting away his false affection, he roared at me. "What do you know? Do you know how I've been living these past 3 years? Every time there's a gathering, everyone has a beautiful girlfriend. And it's only me who's always alone. So many people talk behind my back, saying my girlfriend is a cripple. I want to experience the happiness of a normal person too." Every word from Andrew was like a blade, ruthlessly stabbing me, slowly torturing me, and deeply wounding my heart. His gaze towards me was both pitying and mocking, as if all the tenderness from the past 3 years was just his great mercy and charity. "If I could, I would wish you had never saved me." My nails were already embedded into my palm. At that moment, I couldn't tell where the pain was worse. A burning suffocation swept through my mind. I only felt a buzzing in my ears, and my brain was blank. Everything around me seemed to go silent. The next second, the scene before me changed. No longer was it the apartment that Andrew and I had lived in for 3 years. Instead, it was the back seat of a car. It was the day Andrew and I went back to university to collect our diplomas. With a loud bang, a vehicle turning left collided with a speeding tanker truck. Our car was rear-ended, and I was heavily thrown against the back. And this time, as Andrew wished, I didn't rush to him without hesitation. In the last second before losing consciousness, I saw Andrew trapped in his seat. Chapter 2. I had a very long dream. In the dream, I was wearing a prosthetic limb, dressed in a pure white wedding gown. I walked slowly onto the wedding stage. I was filled with joy, waiting for my prince. But the next moment, the big screen that was supposed to show the sweet life of Andrew and me suddenly switched to a scene of me wallowing in despair, crying uncontrollably. People were pointing and whispering, and my groom took the hand of another girl. He smiled and said, "Emma, forgive me. I really can't spend a lifetime with someone I don't love. I can give you a lot of money, but I can't continue taking care of you. The person I've always loved is Joanna." I was abandoned at the wedding scene, and everyone looked at me with pity. I felt like a clown cast aside by the whole world, never having hated someone as much as I did at that moment. The overwhelming hatred was about to engulf me. I staggered around like a madwoman. The scene shifted, and I was standing on the rooftop of a hotel. The white wedding gown fluttered in the wind. I spread my wings like a butterfly. All that remained in my ears was the piercing scream of my mother. Chapter 3. When I woke up in the hospital, Andrew was already in the emergency room. I stared blankly for a moment, unable to believe I was really back. I had thought it was just a dream, but when I pinched the flesh on my left leg, the pain was all too real. Overwhelmed with joy, tears streamed down my face. My mother held me tightly, her warm tears soaking my clothes. "Emma, you almost gave me a heart attack." I could hear the tremor in her voice, a mix of relief and horror. Too bad about Andrew. I was reminded of the last time I woke up, seeing my mother holding back tears and the chaotic, sorrowful cries from the wedding scene. Everything felt like it was from another life. It was so good that I had a chance to try again. Ignoring the pain, I hobbled to the emergency room door, where I could hear the overwhelming cries of Andrew's family. "We can't amputate. How can we amputate? Andrew is so proud. How can he handle this?" It was Andrew's mother's anguished cries. But no matter how much Andrew's mother pleaded, the doctor shook his head with regret. "Crush injury, and there are still blood clots in the patient's brain. It's very dangerous. If we don't operate soon, we might miss the best time for treatment." In the end, Andrew's leg was amputated, but his condition was even worse than mine had been. His left leg was amputated from the hip down. The doctor also mentioned that because the blood clots in his brain weren't fully resolved, Andrew had a high chance of losing his eyesight. Over the next 2 days, I visited Andrew frequently. The person in the bed was pale and motionless. He was nothing like the confident and arrogant Andrew of the past. I silently stayed in the hospital room, determined to wait for him to wake up. I ignored my own injuries. To others, it seemed like I was deeply devoted to Andrew. Even Andrew's mother advised me to go home and rest. I stubbornly shook my head and squeezed out a few tears. "I'm fine. I want to see Andrew wake up. I'm afraid he'll be upset." In truth, I just wanted to see Andrew wake up with my own eyes, and then tell him directly, "You look so disgusting now." How would the once adored and pampered prince react to knowing not only has he lost a limb but might also go blind? On the 5th day, Andrew finally woke up. Chapter 4. As soon as I entered the room, I saw the mess scattered all over the floor. It must have been Andrew's doing. The nurse was picking up the broken pieces. Andrew's mother had a worried look, her eyes red and clearly having just cried. Although Andrew was weak from just waking up, he still had the strength to get angry. It seems he hadn't reached the breaking point yet. I had underestimated him. Andrew lay on the bed, his eyes vacant, like a lifeless rag doll, as the doctor had said. Due to the pressure from the blood clots in his brain, Andrew had lost his sight, but it was only temporary. Once his condition stabilized and the clots were removed, he could still regain his vision. Andrew's mother pointed to Andrew's leg and then shook her head at me. I suddenly realized that Andrew didn't know his leg was gone, but how could I let him see the truth? Of course, I pretended not to see it. I quickly moved to Andrew's side and held his hand tightly, crying uncontrollably. I said, "Andrew, pull yourself together. Even if you've lost a leg, we can use a prosthesis. You'll still be able to ride horses and race." I knew Andrew would break down, but I didn't expect him to go this wild. He suddenly gripped my hand tightly, his voice tight. "What did you say? Say it again." I was startled and couldn't break free, holding back the pain in my hand. I continued to comfort him. "Andrew, if you want to cry, then cry. I'll always be with you." Andrew, as if going mad, ripped the needle from his hand and struggled to feel his leg, but he felt nothing. First, he was stunned, then his body began to tremble. He roared and pounded his right leg, with veins bulging on his hands. Andrew's mother cried and tried to pull Andrew away, but Andrew pushed her aside. The room was filled with his hoarse shouts, "Get out! All of you! Get out!" After a while, Andrew seemed to be exhausted. He let go of my hand, his expression desolate, still sobbing quietly, like a trapped beast. Chapter 5. I stood to the side, sneering, as tears streamed down my face. But I wasn't crying for Andrew. It was as if I was seeing my past self again. In my previous life, when I first learned that I had lost a limb, I felt the same despair. I had trained in ballet for 18 years. Even my teacher said I was born to shine on stage. But I lost my leg, and my dream was shattered. I still remember those darkest days. I locked myself in my room, refusing to see anyone, wanting to hide in a corner where no one could find me. Anything could touch my sensitive nerves. I almost self-harmed and even considered suicide. It was Andrew who broke down the locked door and carried me out of the pool of my own blood. He held me tightly, gently kissing my cheeks. "Emma, I'm sorry. I didn't protect you. If you're going to blame someone, blame me. Don't hurt yourself." Andrew convinced my parents and brought me to his apartment, promising to take care of me for life. But in the end, it was all a deception. After our engagement, Andrew used my family's resources to rapidly expand his business. In just 3 years, his family's group had become one of the top enterprises in Kyoto, leaving my family far behind. He even sabotaged my family's group during a land bid, suppressing us both openly and covertly. I had heard my mother hint at this, but at that time, I was too dependent on Andrew to realize what the person I loved most was plotting. It wasn't until I saw those chat records that I realized how terribly wrong I had been. Looking at the suffering Andrew on the bed, a thought emerged in my mind. Since I was reborn, everything Andrew had done to me, I would repay him in full. He didn't like me, did he? Then I would stay by his side. I would make him rely on me and fall in love with me step by step, until he couldn't live without me. Then I would throw him into hell. So, I bent down and embraced the sobbing Andrew. Under the shocked gaze of Andrew's mother, I promised word by word, "Andrew, don't be afraid. I will take care of you for life. Even if you've lost a leg, I will still be with you." Chapter 6. So, I took on the responsibility of caring for Andrew. I went to his apartment every day, come rain or shine. To others, it seemed like I loved Andrew to the extreme. Even Andrew thought so. After all, Who could endure risking their entire future on a person with a disability? When my mom learned that I had voluntarily offered to take care of Andrew, she almost locked me up. She looked at me with utter disbelief. I know you like that boy, but his accident has nothing to do with you. Why do you have to risk your whole life for him? I also remembered Andrew's cold questioning. Emma, go ask your parents how they pressured me. I don't know what methods my parents used to make Andrew relent. No matter how unwilling he was, he still put up with me for 3 years despite his aversion. But I would never get answers to that. After I assured my mother that I was fully aware of my decision, she finally relented. Chapter 7. Just like me back then, Andrew became irritable and quick-tempered after his amputation. With his vision gone, he was even more sensitive and suspicious. He complained about the nurse's footsteps being too loud or the chef's cooking not being up to standard. Within just half a month, he had already replaced several nurses. He had thrown countless items from his bedside. No one could calm Andrew down except for me, because only I understood Andrew's pride. I knew what he needed and the most sensitive spots. When he unintentionally pursed his lips, I would promptly bring him a cup of hot water. When he repeatedly turned to his side, I would help him to the bathroom. Andrew didn't like the chef's food, but he enjoyed the soup I made. No one knew how many times I had made soup for Andrew during those 3 years in my previous life. I knew his tastes perfectly. Within a month, all the servants and nurses had been driven out of the house by Andrew. From then on, only I was allowed into his room. Sometimes Andrew would show a look of confusion. Emma, you're so good to me, but Emma, I don't deserve you now. You really don't have to. I knew Andrew had started to rely on me, but what I wanted was still far from enough. I pressed my index finger to his lips, my voice soft and gentle. I know everything. I'm just so heartbroken for you. As long as you get better, I don't care about anything else. Andrew didn't say anything more, but there was more tenderness in his eyes. Chapter 8. With my attentive care, Andrew's temper gradually improved. The frequency of him throwing things decreased significantly. Andrew clearly became more dependent on me, but I knew he hadn't completely fallen in love with me yet, because deep down, he still had a white moonlight, a person he idealized. As his health improved, the blood clots in his brain could also be removed. Andrew's family hired the top surgical specialists in the country for his operation. The surgery was very successful. On the day the bandages were removed, Andrew's mood noticeably brightened. His eyes kept darting toward the door. I knew he was waiting for someone. After Andrew had looked countless times, a white figure finally appeared. Joanna was a renowned talent in the university's dance department and also my roommate. Many referred to us as the two beauties of the dance department, graceful in posture and skilled in dance. In our second year, Andrew almost fell in love with Joanna at first sight. Since then, whenever Andrew came to see me, it was actually to see Joanna. I had loved Andrew for 10 years, and it would be a lie to say I wasn't hurt. Although Andrew had never explicitly rejected me, he had also never given me a clear answer. I knew I had lost completely. I had quietly stepped back, but it seemed they hadn't ended up together either. I wasn't originally jealous of Joanna. It was just that, on the eve of the wedding, I found messages between them on Andrew's phone. Andrew, I've missed you so much these 3 years. I have too. I regret not accepting you when you liked me. Now I realize that I truly love only you. Andrew, if I come back to interrupt the wedding, would you come with me? I would. Every time I think about those messages from my past life, I still feel sick to my stomach. I wanted to see if Joanna, who had publicly interrupted a wedding in my previous life, would still love Andrew. So, while Joanna was tearfully caring for Andrew, I brought the supplies for changing his dressings. Andrew, it's time to change your dressings. The ambiguous atmosphere abruptly stopped, and the air seemed to freeze for a moment. I hesitated, feeling a bit embarrassed as I stood there. Did I come at a bad time? But the doctor said the dressings need to be changed at this time every day. It's fine, Emma. I'll take care of it, Joanna said, taking the supplies from my hands and preparing to change Andrew's dressings. I was more than happy to let her take over. I was just worried she might miss the scene. When Joanna carefully removed the bandages from Andrew's leg, she was clearly startled. Andrew's left leg had been amputated above the thigh. The amputation site, still healing, was swollen and grotesque. The scar was like a wild beast, spreading menacingly over the skin, making one shudder. With a loud crash, the bottle of medicine Joanna was holding fell to the floor and shattered. She visibly took a step back, her face a mix of shock and fear. The atmosphere froze again, the room silent enough that every breath could be heard. Andrew, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Joanna's voice trembled. Andrew's eyes were filled with hurt and disappointment. You two talk. I'll step outside, not wanting to be involved in their conflict. I tactfully left the room. I heard Andrew's hoarse voice questioning. Are you so scared of me? Am I that terrifying? Andrew, I really didn't mean it. Joanna's voice was shaky, holding back tears. Soon, I heard the sounds of things being thrown inside. I couldn't help but smirk. Andrew had indeed been provoked again. However, it seemed he could only vent his anger by throwing things. Then came Andrew's furious shout. Get out, get as far away as possible. And don't come back. Don't ever show up in front of me again. Joanna ran out of the room crying. She ran and cried, glaring at me as she passed by, not even turning her head. The flowers Joanna had sent were all thrown out by Andrew. One almost hit me in the face. I gently curved my lips into a smile. So it turns out, so-called true love is nothing compared to disability. Chapter 9. Due to Joanna's provocation, Andrew's emotions, which had finally stabilized, began to collapse again. He became extremely enraged once more. He smashed things repeatedly and even started cursing. When Andrew smashed his phone again, I finally saw the barely concealed impatience on Andrew's mother's face. It's understandable. She doesn't have only Andrew as her son. Since Andrew became disabled, his father has only visited him once. I could tell that his father had already given up on Andrew as a son. His mother had also been incredibly busy lately, not only dealing with women and illegitimate children outside but also managing the company's affairs. Added to this was Andrew's unpredictable behavior, which I imagine would be unbearable for anyone for too long. Andrew's mother no longer visits him every day, only every few days. Andrew must have noticed the change in his mother as his outbursts became more frequent. So, whenever Andrew lost his temper, I would silently stand behind the door and watch, since he didn't allow outsiders to come close and the servants dared not approach. When he shouted for water, I pretended not to hear. I would then cleverly appear after he had shouted several times. Furious, I would then hold his hand tightly and gently comfort him. Andrew, I'm sorry. I was making soup and didn't hear you calling. I promise I'll come immediately next time. Don't be angry. It's not good for your health. Even when Andrew was furious, he glared at me with anger. I could only stubbornly turn away and wipe my tears with a hurt expression. If you really dislike me so much, I can leave. Andrew finally showed a panicked expression. He grasped my hand tightly, humble and fragile. Emma, don't go. You're all I have left. Time passed in this way, and gradually, I realized that Andrew couldn't live without me. Chapter 10. Andrew's health was gradually improving, and I had successfully passed the audition for the ballet troupe. Standing on the familiar stage once again after 3 years, I was nearly moved to tears. To the lively music, I arched my feet, relaxed my shoulders, and danced like a butterfly. As I stretched my arms upward, it felt like I could almost touch the brilliant stars. With every leap and spin, I could feel an endless surge of energy filling my heart. Due to my excellent performance, the troupe leader specifically recommended me for a ballet competition. To practice better, I started spending less time at Andrew's apartment. The housekeeper called me several times. When I finally managed to visit the apartment, the housekeeper seemed relieved. You finally came. He's had another outburst. We can't calm him down. As soon as I walked in, I saw Andrew's emotionless face. He immediately confronted me. What have you been so busy with lately? Why haven't you come to see me? I raised an eyebrow inwardly. Even the proud Andrew was like this. I smiled at Andrew and cheerfully said, before graduation, I auditioned for the ballet troupe, and I got in. The troupe leader even specially asked me to represent the troupe in the competition. I deliberately ignored the increasingly sullen look on Andrew's face and continued to speak happily. Emma, enough. I covered my lips, pretending to have let something slip by accident. Then I glanced at Andrew's empty left leg with a look of sincere apology. Andrew, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I paused. Then continued. I've just been so excited. I've been practicing a lot for the ballet competition and neglected you. After the competition, I promise I didn't get to finish my sentence before Andrew slammed his fist on the table. Are you just here to watch me suffer and provoke me on purpose? He curled his lips into a cold, self-deprecating smile, murmuring, even if you think I'm a burden. I was startled by Andrew's outburst and took a step back. Confused, I wanted to comfort him, but hesitated. I really didn't mean to. If you don't like me, Andrew, I can leave right now. I wiped the tears from my eyes and turned to leave. Behind me, I heard a heavy object hit the floor. It seemed that Andrew tried to reach out for me in his urgency and ended up falling off the bed. Seeing Andrew in such a pathetic state, I suddenly remembered what he once said about me. Emma, with her limp, really looks like a clown. How can I keep from laughing out loud? Ha ha ha. He used to share my suffering as if it were a joke. Perhaps fate has a sense of irony. And now Andrew is the one who looks like a clown. If I could, I'd love to film this moment and let Andrew see himself as the clown he once mocked. Chapter 11. Since that day, Andrew became increasingly clingy. He seemed afraid of my departure, calling me countless times every day. I was busy practicing ballet and often ignored him. He would send me long string after long string of messages. Emma, will you come see me today? Emma, I want to eat the pork rib soup you make. The soup the nanny makes isn't as good as yours. I didn't reply, just turned my phone to silent. A friend from the ballet troupe teased, having a fight with your boyfriend? I laughed and shook my head. He's not a boyfriend, just someone who's needy and persistent. I suddenly realized that playing hard to get was really effective with Andrew. The avoidance of his white moonlight and the abandonment by his parents had turned Andrew into a neglected burden, and I had clearly become Andrew's most important emotional support. Seeing him so insecure and heavily dependent on me, I knew my plan had worked. As soon as I mentioned leaving, he would desperately try to keep me. The best is always what you can't have. I must admit, it was quite satisfying to torment Andrew every now and then. Soon, Andrew's birthday was approaching. Since Andrew's accident, he had become very afraid of seeing others. Even his childhood friends hadn't been in touch. A week in advance, I arranged with his friends to prepare a grand gift for him. Chapter 12. On the morning of his birthday, Andrew's friends arrived early. They brought a huge bouquet of flowers. One of his closest friends even had a limited edition sports car prepared. They wanted to surprise Andrew. When they entered, Andrew was practicing walking with a crutch. Bro, look what we've got for you. The latest model sports car. At the moment their eyes met, I clearly saw the shock in everyone's gaze. It seemed the outside world didn't know yet that the young prince of the family had become disabled. The friends stammered, bro, you. Andrew's face turned ashen, with a mix of embarrassment and awkwardness in his eyes. Who could have imagined that the once arrogant Andrew would end up like this? Due to the accident, Andrew now can't stand the sound of cars, and the arrival of his racing buddies was like rubbing salt into his wounds. He clenched his fists, veins standing out on his hands. Seeing the car keys in his friend's hand, he nearly shouted, "Who invited you here? Who invited you here? Get the hell out of here!" So, a birthday party that was supposed to be pleasant was ruined. I escorted Andrew's friends out. Then, apologetically, I said, "Don't take it personally. Andrew just can't accept it yet." Everyone expressed understanding and left with looks of pity. When I returned to the room, I was met with Andrew's sullen expression. He gritted his teeth and asked me, "Emma, was this deliberate? Did you do it to make a fool of me?" Looking down at him from above, I didn't answer. Suddenly, Andrew's expression filled with profound sadness. He looked at me almost pleadingly. "Why are you doing this? I was ready to spend my life with you. I love you so much." Chapter 13. I couldn't help but laugh. In my previous life, when I needed his love the most, he found me utterly disgusting. Every time we were intimate, he would complain in the group chat. Disgusting. I really don't want to touch her. When will this end? And now, the one with the missing leg was him. He was ready to spend his life with me? Claiming he loved me? What a joke, such cheap love. I don't need it. But now, it was my turn to find him repulsive. So, I recited the prepared lines to him word by word. Bro, who understands? Every time I see her limping, I just want to puke. If I'd known I'd have to spend my life with someone I don't love, I'd rather it had been me who lost a limb. I really want to escape this marriage. Seeing Andrew's increasingly bewildered face, I stepped closer and whispered in his ear, "How does it feel to be trampled on? But this is exactly how you treated me in my past life. You, a cripple. Why do you think I would love you wholeheartedly?" Andrew seemed to recall something. He clutched his head tightly, and from the intense pain, he fell to the ground. He writhed and moaned in agony, beads of cold sweat appearing on his forehead. I watched coldly, feeling an intense sense of satisfaction. No one knew how many nightmares I had experienced since my rebirth. In my dreams, Andrew pretended to love me dearly but cruelly pushed me into the abyss behind my back. On countless nights, I would wake up from nightmares, terrified and shaken. I feared that my rebirth was just a dream, that when I woke up, I would be Emma abandoned at the wedding once again. I stared derisively at his amputated leg and taunted, "Andrew, you look truly disgusting with just one leg." Finally, Andrew on the floor broke down completely. He stared at me with bloodshot eyes, emitting a deep, guttural roar. He looked utterly pitiful. I ignored him, opened the door, and turned to leave. All I could hear was his pitiful plea, "Emma, don't go, please." Chapter 14. I had completely severed ties with Andrew. I no longer needed to run to his apartment. I focused entirely on preparing for the ballet competition. Within a few days, news spread throughout the industry that the prince of the family had become an invalid. However, his mom called me several times, each time pleading for me to visit Andrew. I had declined a few times, but she persisted. "Please go see Andrew. He won't listen to anyone else. Only you can make him feel a little better. Please, just for the sake of how I've treated you over the years, come to the hospital." After hanging up, I found the situation quite amusing. I had treated Andrew like this, and he still wanted me to visit him? Wasn't he afraid I might say something to hurt him even more? To focus on my competition, I chose to ignore the calls, days and nights of grueling practice, with no one knowing how much sweat I had shed. Only I knew. The stage, which I had yearned for over the past 3 years, every movement of mine was graceful, whether in spins or leaps, bringing tears to the audience's eyes. Finally, I had the chance to step back onto that stage, and I was determined to seize the opportunity. On the day of the competition, I won by an overwhelming margin. The applause from the audience was thunderous, making my ears ring. On stage, my eyes were brimming with tears, overwhelmed with emotion. At that moment, I forgot about the hatred and pain. I was simply the most radiant swan on the stage. It felt like a heavy burden had been lifted from my heart. After the competition ended, I received a call from Andrew. His voice on the phone was gentle, even with a hint of a smile. "Emma, congratulations." "Thank you." In my daze, I heard Andrew take a deep breath. "Emma, I've remembered everything that happened. I'm sorry for what I did to you, for playing with your feelings. It's understandable that you hate me, but I really didn't want you to die." I looked at the blinking neon lights and didn't respond. "Emma, besides hatred, is there anything else?" "No," I interrupted Andrew firmly. "Some things are destined to be irreparable from the start." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. After a while, I heard him say, "I understand." Chapter 15. The next time I saw Andrew was in the hospital corridor. Andrew, in his wheelchair, looked pale and exhausted. The once vibrant youth now seemed like an old man nearing the end of his days. According to his caretaker, Andrew had refused treatment, and his accident injuries had flared up again. In just a few short months, Andrew's disability had caused a dramatic shift in his family dynamics. The illegitimate son of his father had been openly brought back and seamlessly took over the family business. His mom was so distraught that she had been hospitalized, and the family was in chaos. Andrew, however, seemed indifferent to the turmoil. Day after day, He stayed in his apartment, staring vacantly at the begonia flowers in the garden. When our eyes met, Andrew visibly froze. His eyes betrayed an unhidden hope. "Emma, did you come to see me?" He asked the question and then self-deprecatingly smiled. "How could you? You hate me so much." He looked at me cautiously. "Emma, if there is an afterlife, would you ever forgive me?" I gave him a smile. "Andrew, everything is in the past. I don't hate you anymore, but I don't want to forgive you either." As soon as my words left my lips, the faint glimmer in Andrew's eyes finally vanished, leaving them dull and despondent. Although I no longer hated him, I would never forget the anger I felt when I discovered the truth. I can choose not to hate, but forgiveness is another matter entirely. Chapter 16. The last news I received about Andrew was his death. Andrew, the heir of the family, committed suicide in his private apartment at Haitang Bay at 3 in the morning. He died by wrist slashing, and at the time of his death, there was a bright bouquet of begonia flowers beside him. Begonias were my favorite flowers. In my past life, to make me happy, Andrew had planted an entire garden of begonias. Perhaps Andrew truly loved me at that time as well. As the gentle breeze brushed against the window, my thoughts stirred, and I seemed to see again the young man I once loved deeply. When I won awards, he would present me with a bouquet of flowers. He would take me out to celebrate with food and fun all night long. When my exam results were poor and I was scolded, he would drag me to the library for extra lessons. When he made me speechless with frustration, he would affectionately tap my forehead with a mix of helplessness and indulgence. I would squeeze through crowds, foolishly hugging his backpack while he played basketball. Then we would ride home together under the glow of the setting sun. Back then, I thought we would be like this forever. Little did I know that reality would strike us so harshly. It wasn't until much later that I learned the meaning of begonia flowers. Painful longing, hopeless love, just like between Andrew and me. I loved him when he ignored me. By the time he turned back to me, I no longer wanted to look back.